Hey, what's going on, everybody? Brian here. Ooh, camera angles, all sorts of weird today. Anyway, today we're going to be building some Astro stuff. We're going to be playing with Astro. We're going to be playing with this idea that I've kind of gotten literally an hour or so ago. That I think the state of technology is such that we focus so much on enterprise because almighty dollar. Um, And I worked in agencies for a little bit. I worked at a small agency that built small to medium websites, like small to medium business websites. And there isn't a whole lot of tooling um, meant for that. Um, Now I'm curious if I'm even, yeah. Um, and I think it's a shame. There's a lot of money there that a lot of companies are leaving on the table. They're so focused on getting the like $50,000 a year, $50,000 ARR annual revenue, that they ignore the places that might be there and might bring 5,000 ARR and getting a lot of those. And I am not going to make a startup. That's not what I'm here for. However, I do think there's lots of tooling to be done, and I do think that that style of business, that small business agency, um, I don't know. There's a lot of good work being done there. I think Astro is a really great fit for that as well. It's close to HTML. It's close to a lot of things. It's practical in so many ways where you can bring your own, front end framework to it. You can go serverless. You can go static. It defaults to static, meaning that a lot of the choices that you make are solid choices early on. So I think it's really interesting, and I think that if I had had a tool like Astro in my agency life, and I came out of agencies near the beginning of like the Jamstack era, right? Um, I think if I'd had Astro, we would have pivoted to Astro. We had our own custom content management system. I think I would have pivoted us to a headless CMS. I think we would have pivoted away from the 960 grid that we were on, maybe into some Tailwind stuff. But I think Astro would have been a big deal. And in fact, we had in PHP we had Twig, which is a template language, and the template language was where a lot of that came from. And I think we get a lot of that kind of for free out of Astro's templates, which are JSX like, but not quite. And with all the new stuff they're adding, I think bringing in new little bits of functionality would be really, really easy in the type of world that I lived in at that time. In these kind of small marketing websites, 10, 15 pages, maybe a blog, maybe some sort of other dynamic thing happening, but primarily allowing for small businesses to have promotion, right? You shouldn't just have a Facebook page. You shouldn't just be on social media. You should have your own place on the web. And small agencies bring that, right? Most small businesses aren't going to be making their own website and aren't going to have a huge budget, right? I mean, when I was in agency land, our real low end clients were like 6,000 for a build, but primarily we were in maybe the 15 to 25,000. And the faster we could accomplish these tasks, the faster the websites we could pump out, the more profitable that business became. But also, that's a benefit. And I think focusing on that, I think we can do some interesting things. And I think that we can, honestly, there's a lot of things to be said around the cookie cutter nature of the web and the fact that a lot of websites look the same. But honestly, for those small businesses, they don't need a lot of weird, right? Like weird's great, and I'm a big fan of weird, but we can make a component library. We can make something that is reusable between websites, and I think we can do a lot with that. So that's kind of what I want to play with today, and let's do it. Let's see, make sure I'm in the right. Yeah, all right. Hey, it's not up and running. I just installed a clean Astro repository with just npm create Astro. So we need to get up and running with npm run dev. Get rid of the welcome screen. We should be up and running. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie that this is partially also inspired by looking at things like full dev UI and shad cn, um, but it is what it is. Anyway, so I think a couple things I'm going to do. I think I want to use Tailwind for this. I think um, there's enough Tailwind use out in the world that means that a small agency will probably have a dev that knows Tailwind, or maybe they're already using Tailwind and they've already got their defaults, which I think is an important thing for this. And setting up a whole new set of defaults is probably outside the scope of what we would worry about. And so I think I want to do that. So that means we need to install Tailwind. So npx astro add Tailwind. And at some point, we're going to also package it up into its own like installable integration in Astro World. We do need to go ahead and remember to do this. See, this is, I need to like mention this to the Astro crew, right? Like that's no good. It copies these pipes. But as we build these components out, we do need a place to show them off, and that will have this basic layout. Although I don't know how that will work with our various components. So yeah, I gotta figure that out. I gotta figure out if I need to like embed the styles in a specific way. That'll be a new thing to think about. Import source styles global.css. Because really, in the end, we're going to be building HTML. The HTML is going to have classes, but it might be that I go a different way and don't even use the class-based system. Just use what we get out of Tailwind. Because the nice thing on that is the tokens, right? The fact that a developer could change tokens and change the styles. And if as we go along you have any questions, do let me know over in chat. I'll keep an eye out over there. So I mean, there's a lot of different levels. And in fact, I should probably like have some notes open somewhere so that I can think this through in probably a better way. Let me get a Google Doc open. Google Docs. And add it over here so we can think through what we need. There we go. So this will be our agency component library notes. And we need, some primitives like, buttons and headings. Maybe just a prose container. Probably a container itself that has like a max width set on it. We need some blocks, which would be like a banner or a CTA or testimonial. Then we probably want to have like a card grid idea, right? So we could have a card and we could have a grid component. Because we, in agency land, we used to have the idea of triptychs. Most of our sites had a thing that had 3 things across, right? And again, like looking at the vanilla nature of what this ends up looking like is not a big deal in this case. We're going for like inexpensive, and the nice thing is a lot of this can be broken out of. Like I think an escape hatch is important. And so like a big thing on this, right, would be the fact that like when you get into it, you use these blocks wherever you want, and then because you're building the pages still, you can exit out like no problem. So I think that's an important aspect of all of this. Plenty of escape hatches as kind of a driving factor there. All right, so we could probably start easy and figure out what we want maybe our headings to be, our headings and buttons, right? Because that's what we want to showcase. Now, the interesting thing on the headings is like I got to figure out how to craft the actual HTML around that, and we might go and get inspiration from Full Dev, because I think they probably do it in a decent way there. But let's go ahead and strip our our page or index, get rid of the welcome. We don't need the welcome component in here anymore. And let's create a heading.astro component. And at some point, I'll probably even play around with types too, because I think that'll be important. But basically, we want, something along this line, right? Where the heading is variable, where we'll also want the classes to be variable as well. But let's start with text 3XL. And let's just get it on the page, because that's the first way to start any new project. Let's get our first thing on the page. So we want our heading, and we'll say, welcome to the component library. Hey, there it is. Perfect. That's basically what we want to see. It comes through as an HTML H1. Let's go ahead and look at, and I'll give full props to, is it full dev? Yeah. Full.dev, which is a cool little UI library, and I've used it a little bit. It's not exactly for me, but there's definitely some inspiration here to be had. Let's look and see how they do their heading. So sizes, sure, that's all. Oh, they've got depth. That's interesting. And they've got an element component. Okay, that'll be interesting. So they've got an element component. They've got a fragment for their HTML, set HTML text. That's odd to me for just a heading. But we've got a depth that has a default of 2, so an H2 in this case. And wow, I'm just now realizing how far behind the stream is. That's intense. I just glanced over and like, wow, super far behind. Anyway, so yeah, so we're looking at as, and then the as is H with a depth, so H1 through 6. And okay, interesting. So let's take a look at what they're doing with element, because that's where the magic's happening. Wow. Const all of these things. That's a lot of things. Interesting. And then as, and it's got a class list. So y is as. As is coming through. Okay, so it's div. Interesting. Yeah, I don't like this idea at all, the set HTML. I think that's dangerous. I think using just slot would be better there, but we'll see how it actually plays out. Okay, and then they set up their imports for styles, which makes sense. All right. Well, I'm curious how this will play out. So render end, so render equals show, and show is content. Okay, and it's either going to show content or slot trim. Interesting. We'll see why they did that maybe as we go forward. That's a lot going on in this component, which makes sense because it's kind of the component they go through. But that's interesting. Okay, let's see what happens if, let's see, let's set an as in here. So const as equals H1 from Astro props, and let's make it an H2. And then, but where are they getting that as component? Why is it capital AS? As is as equals div. Okay. So So if we did that, what would we get? So it looks the same. That's good. Oh, go away, Chrome DevTools. See, but yeah, it comes through as an as. So we need to pretend that it is. I don't know. So we would say something like that, right? And then we need to but yeah, okay. Then we say capital A here. It doesn't like that because it doesn't find it. So let's see. They are, this is a type. So it actually goes this way. So when we have as, get the as and set it, but we're going to call it that. All right, we have two things. That's solid, and we have an H2 and the as. Okay, so that's what's happening there. It just needs to have the capital, so it recognizes it as a component. That's honestly fairly handy. I like that. And then what we want to do is we want to give it a few different sizes, right? And they'll correspond to the various. Let's give it a weight. We'll actually set that to bold. And then we want to make it so it's easy to put into Tailwind, and we want to make it so that it's so that it makes sense to our developers coming in. And then we want a size, and the size will be somewhere between, maybe we'll just make it, small, medium, large, XL, 2XL, 3XL, 4XL. Let's set it default to 2XL. And then we can convert this over to a variable in here. Put it inside here. And in fact, we want this to be text. And this will be our size. And no, let's not go this far, although we'll want to get there eventually. We also don't want text center. We do want the weight, so that's good. All right, so we get that because we're not actually passing any of it. So we did get 2XL, although that doesn't appear to be getting our Tailwind styles, and that's why we have to import the Tailwind styles into this. So we can have a style and at import. What are we doing down here? This is what we want. And is that where it needs to be? No, we need to go to there. Although theoretically I shouldn't need to do that, right? Because it was working before. So I wonder if text 2XL is not correct. Although text 3XL just worked. Tailwind. That's not where I want to be. Let's get to regular Tailwind. And I want to take a look at quick search, and we'll go to text size, font size, text dash, and then we do have 2XL, so I don't know why 2XL is not working there. We have XL, 2XL, 3XL, 4XL, 5XL, and wow, it goes higher than I thought. Nice. 2XL is what we're putting in there. Is that formatted the way we want it? text dash 2XL, text dash size. So theoretically, so we can also bring another heading tag in, and we can have as h3 and set the size equal to, let's set it to 5XL and see what happens. See, those aren't coming through. We did get the h3, and that's good. We are getting text 5XL, but it's not finding that. So what happens if we change it to that and then change it again? Let's try 3 again. 3 works. 4 does not. So 3 is working. So heading as h3, size 5XL does not work. Does 3XL work here? It does. So why is 3XL working when none of the other ones are? Anything in here that would make sense? Anything in styles global that would make sense? We're just importing Tailwind in there. What happens if we, I mean, we're importing it, we're already importing it again. So what happens if we remove that? 3XL works as expected. And then close layout. Index. Let's just try XL. XL does not work. Oh, Mike said something and then retracted it. Well, hi anyway, Mike. All right. Let's also get rid of all this while I'm thinking about it before I do other things. Interesting. I don't really understand why it's not picking this up. It should be picking that up from here. Let's see if we can set the font weight to bold. I think it's font dash bold at that point. Oh, restarting restarting the dev server as Mike is suggesting, that makes good sense. Shouldn't need to, in my opinion, but when in doubt, restart, right? No, it doesn't seem to be helping on this one. In fact, oh, it does help because we've just found out that 3XL is not working. So we were getting a cache, and the cache was showing something that shouldn't have been working, because this was set. If this was at 3XL, yeah. Okay, no, super helpful, Mike. We now have the actual bug happening, which probably means that we do need to. Do I need this render anymore? I don't think I actually need that. No, good. That's just taking up extra. All right, so style, and we will import from styles global.css. Do we have Tailwind? We have all of that. Look at that. Text 3. But all that Tailwind, all that stuff at the top is not actually, that's just a reset. Huh. Text area. Wow, that's a lot. Interesting. Now, usually when I've got Tailwind, the global would be bigger than this, but maybe that's changed because there are a couple other things that are happening there. Let's look at Tailwind Astro and make sure that we don't need other things that was set up. Yeah, import at Tailwind. And then import the global.css into our index or into wherever the shared layout is. So all of that, instead of doing it as a style, which this is just something that I was looking at in the other framework, we can probably import it up here, right? Import styles global CSS. Anything? No. I wasn't planning on debugging like this. I was planning on this going a little bit smoother. Dev toolbar. So why? Now, out of curiosity, let's take a look at H2 with a class of text to XL. Whoa. So it picked up, it's picking up in here, right? It's picking up when I do this on the page, but it's not picking up the styles in the component, which is super interesting. And you can see, I bet since we've got text 3XL here, I bet if I were to change this one to 3XL, we get it. Because it's building that in. It's only bringing the styles with it that it needs, which is nice. That's absolutely what we want. However, it's not behaving as I would expect it to. Oops, I don't want to be in there. I mean, we could, again, style, import. How's that going to function? Astro style tag import CSS file. Import a local style sheet. That's on the index. So theoretically, that would be fine. Like, this is how it should work. Which is what we did to begin with. We shouldn't need to use CSS import. Don't need that anymore. Is this correct? It is. It is where it needs to be. There's got to be something in like the rendering stack here that's a problem, right? Like by the time it gets to the component, it can't embed styles anymore. That doesn't seem right at all. Import, make it purple into the component, right? Like this is, okay, here we go. Scoped styles. So we import, make it purple. We set a style in our component for red. And if you make the imported style more specific, it will have a higher precedence over the scoped style. That's fine. That's just showing that, yeah, this should work if I import it in. Huh. These are in the component. See, the thing is, it's not even looking at it from a perspective of the cascade, right? These styles don't even exist when they're being done in the component. And I wonder if that's because of the way I'm setting the Yeah, let me think about that for a second. I wonder if they're doing. See, they're doing this as a class list. That's probably what I need to be doing. Class list will make it so that it gets picked up probably. So instead of class, let's do a class list, and we'll have an array inside of that. I like that it really wants me to set these colors already. Like that's all good, but not what we actually want. Get rid of the class. Let's go ahead and restart the server because we might be grabbing from the cache. Oh, and let's make sure that we don't have the H2. See, we're back to it. That's confounding. Because it's doing neither of those things. But I bet I wasn't aware that dynamic class names work in Tailwind. Well, I feel like they're supposed to. Maybe they don't, right? Maybe that's, let's look that up. Dynamic class names, Astro, Tailwind. Build class names. Just in time doesn't support it. Config based approach. Then I apply the styling like this. So this is an Astro, but looking at it, it looks like they're setting those class names. So what we want to be doing probably is setting them not here like this, but setting them up here. So we could have, I mean, that means I'd probably want to pass the class names in, right? But let's assume that I don't want to do that. And let's call it text class equals, and we'll grab, I don't want that. We'll want it to be, let's just, for now, let's take a look at it that way and see what happens. Yeah, no, and Mike, you're saying I feel that was always a limitation, but like I feel like that's, and again, I'm far from a Tailwind apologist, right? I like Tailwind and I don't get along real well in a lot of ways, but I feel like that's a little bit on the build, right? Like theoretically, at some point, you have to say like, does it just work as CSS, or does it need to always be this kind of scoped styling, right? This styling that's then only applied in certain situations. And I know you don't want to like have unused styles, so like I appreciate, you know, things being removed out, but again, why isn't, like, we know that this works, and then they're setting styles with an import as global, which would also make sense. Because anytime it's being used, it would then add it to the global style sheet, which would probably be what we needed to do. And what's it doing up here? So we do have a class list. Which is an array that then has this big object, which is, oh. So, yeah, let's, I mean, most of this we shouldn't need. And CSS error. Missing base specifier in Tailwind package. So yeah, this is an old way of doing it. I also don't need this anymore. And I suppose what it actually wants is that. But of course, if we add this as text to Excel, it'll work. Yeah. So then what is the workaround for this? I am curious about the class list directive. Takes an array of class values and converts them into a class string. This is powered by blah, blah, blah. To several different kinds of values. But why do we care? This would be a nice spot in the Astro docs for AY. Like, nice that it can be done, but like, what's the best outcome? So world true. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Odd. There we go. Wait, is it working or is it just fake working? It's fake working again because caching. We're learning things today. I didn't anticipate learning things. Tailwind dynamic class. Tailwind classes with arbitrary values don't get applied. I don't think that's what we care about, but let's see. I think that's more of a Tailwind thing. Tailwind didn't know your dynamic class. All right, so don't construct class names dynamically. That's helpful. Always use complete class names. Cool. Well, we'll just, I don't want to do that. But I should be able to just, that's the thing that I'm thinking, right? Is that shouldn't I be able to come in and have this work? Because then when the HTML is being rendered, then I'm getting it, but I guess I'm not, right? Like if I were to have this come in and have it start its life as text to Excel, and then here pass in size, right? Like, to me, that shouldn't work any better. See, Mike's in here. If you still need to make it work, you might want to define those classes in component to be rendered. Yeah, but see, that's what I thought I was doing here, right? But I guess what you're saying is that what we want to do is, have basically a map, right? And say we've got const sizes equals an array. Actually, no, that's actually what I want. That, right? Which, this is very interesting to me that Copilot really wants them not to match up, but we'll get to that. And then what we would do down here is pull in class list equals sometimes VS Code is not helpful. Equals an array. One of those arrays is going to be, or one of those items in it is going to be sizes at size. What don't you like about that? Yeah, I know. TypeScript, cool. Interestingly, that worked. So then we would type it, and then we'd be able to actually probably even get type ahead here, right? But we could say this is just XL. Well, again, we've learned things today, and thanks, Mike, for the feedback and the help there. Yeah, again, the thing about the modern tech stack that is always strange to me, right, is there's all these helpers, right, and they're actually super helpful things, but they move away from where our understanding is, and not knowing what is doing what and where and when is an interesting problem. In this case, my assumption wasn't that Tailwind was parsing this. It was that the build process, the framework was processing it. But really what's happening is Tailwind has a parser in Vite, and Vite is handling all of that with the Tailwind parser. And again, I would have assumed that happened at a point where my class names were already instantiated, but they weren't. Way more thought process than I thought I was going to need to give that. So yeah, again, I'm glad that these things get stripped when they're not needed, because that makes file sizes less, but woo. All right, so yeah, then we need basically a map in this. I don't actually, I mean, do we think, I think it needs to be explicit, right? I think it needs to match up if I were expecting it, right? So like, maybe we just go that far. So then this one can be as equals H1, and we get a size of 5XL, and we get a weight of bold. Which again, I feel like I should be able to pass the classes in, but that's fine. And then we can set a weight const weights, something along that line. And then we do the same thing here. Cool. Maybe we actually start it. We don't want to start it with bold. We want it to be medium. Which is a heavier weight than I thought it was going to be, if I'm being honest. Interesting. Then we don't need this anymore. And let's, all right. So in typing, I feel like I should be able to use, I hate typing if I'm, yeah. All right, let's see, Astro typing a component. Props. Let's component. The Astro component script is TypeScript, which allows you to add additional syntax to JavaScript for editor tooling, which is great. But how do you want me to do it? Name slot, HTML components. Built-in TypeScript support, that's great. Great, excellent. Component props. The prop type pattern. All right, so we set up an interface for the props, and we see, like, as much as this is fine, like, I feel like could it have Zod? In fact, I think the interesting thing is that in full dev they actually use Zod for their typing, which I'm shocked that there's not like documentation around typing with Zod in this header. So you can see, yeah, we're importing Zod from Astro content, which is fun. And then we're exporting out, because this is a separate file. Header schema is an object. The object has these things. And then when we go to the header component, or heading component, we're importing this as, let's see, but see, it's not, we're getting it as HTML attributes from Astro types. We're not actually getting the heading types, which, wow, look at all this. This is where they're doing it all. I see. Yeah, so instead of setting class names like what we're doing, the heading, this is an aside, right? This is not what I was expecting, but the full dev or full.dev is doing applies, which again might be the right direction. Setting the as here. But where are we getting, why aren't we importing the type, right? Heading. Because I would have expected to import it at that point. Oh, because it's header. I see. It's not heading. Which, is that a component? No, it's a block, probably. Header. And so where are they importing types? Block schema here, but that's a different thing. Huh. Anyway, not a big deal. We'll just go with regular old TypeScript to do it. So we'll do an interface for props, and we'll, yeah. All right. So this thing, like common prop type patterns. If your component takes no props or slotted content, you can use type props equals record string never. If your component must be passed children to its default slot, you can enforce this by children of any. Type utilities, they've got built-in HTML attributes. That's great. It's also possible to extend the default JSX definitions to non-standard attributes by redeclaring Astro HTML. Cool. Component props type. This type export allows you to reference props accepted by another component, even if that component doesn't export props. All right, so set up an interface for props equals, and again, not a huge TypeScript guy, so we're going to go slow. Component props. It's just an object that then has each of our named props in it. Whoa. All right. Well, it's unused and has no side effects. Block scope to size before its declaration. Means we need to set all of this up here. All right, that's not what it wants this to look like. Interface props. We need as, which is a string. Weight as a string is optional. I mean, I guess technically they're all optional, right? And size is a string that's optional. So that should then give us some help down here when we're making a new one. Hover over, do we get? See here it's saying that it's got, yeah, any, which is not technically true. We do have types, I thought, set. But yes, we're not actually setting the type on it, of course. Although they're not doing that here either. Interface props. And then we get Astro props. Now, if we were to say this is required, will we get an error? No. Restart the server. All right, so it's not actually reading our props. Astro custom prop component. Let's see what they do. Again, I feel like this is all that we're supposed to have to do. Styling. They're kind of doing the same thing here. They're making a button. Are they typing? Inferred attributes. Interface props extends the attributes for an A. Cool. Which really we'd want to do that for ours anyway at some point, because we'd want to set up anything that would go on an H1. But again, we're not actually getting the props aren't actually happening. Let's go ahead and let's go ahead and do the built-in HTML attribute stuff because we do want that. So we'll import the HTML attributes type. Our interface props will extend HTML attributes, HTML element, and we'll make it for like the H1, right? And then we can bring any additional attributes in here. And then bring that down onto our as. Which do they see? Yeah, it's a spread on that too. No VS Code. No VS Code. So theoretically, if I wanted to then have this have an escape hatch where I could then add, you know, a style on it. Style equals color blue. That should work. Yeah, cool. Oops. But why is my, oh, props are now being used. That's interesting. So property as is missing. So we're getting, why wasn't this working before? Why wasn't the typing working before? I don't know. That's infuriating. And my tea bag just tossed its label into my tea. That's also infuriating. All right. Hover over that. Heading has props of props, any, but I'd love if it would like show what they were. I am curious, and again, not being a TypeScript person, TypeScript editor hints on TypeScript only allow certain strings. So theoretically, it is what Copilot was giving us before. Here are the strings that it accepts. Oh, wait, that's the question. So theoretically, let's do the as first, right? So as needs to be H1 through H6. So then if we say P, we get a type error. Great. That wasn't working before either. This is what I'm saying, y'all. Like, we don't know where these things are happening. So sometimes these things break. I'm just kind of curious. Yeah, okay. Type errors all over. Awesome. Wow, we spent way too long on doing this. I was going to have like 4 components built. All right, well, let's give our wait helpers 2. Why this wasn't doing anything before, I don't know. Cool. So then when we make a new heading, oops. See, the problem with Copilot is I don't actually want the help. That's what I want. Why wasn't as working for that? Hmm. 6XL. Wait. Nothing. Perfect. Bold. And then, hi there. Cool. I learned a few things. It's always nice to learn things. All right. So what else we need? We also probably should allow for classes to be added onto it, right? So, and even that now I'm kind of debating, right, if that'll even work. But in our array of classes, we should be able to it would be attributes.class, right? And we'd want that to be spread? No? I guess it's just a string. All right, so it didn't break. Good. Class equals under, what is it, tailwind underline? We could just say text amber 700. Cool, that works. Go light. There it is. I mean, props overall to anyone who makes a component library because it's a pain. Wow, was I not expecting that, the class issues that we had. All right, so we could have banner, we could have a button. We're gonna run, it's gonna be super fun with all the different things we're gonna have to do. I mean, the nice thing on this is that TypeScript helper text. I'm just kind of curious. Pick. See, this is actually probably how I should have done it. Omit, exclude, extract. So much easier being like a just straight up web developer when you like just use these things and don't try to build these things. So we could make a container component, and we could get const. We want it to have width, and we want, I don't care about height. center true. Width would be regular. And we also want to get all the attributes equals Astro props. And we also need an as on this as well, as equals div as and then this will be class list equals an array. Whoa. Oh, sure. Cool. And then we also need all the attributes. So then we can do get rid of that, index container as equals section. And wrap a couple of these in it. And then we could even say, do we want this to be where we put paddings? And again, like there's a balance here, right? The balance is how much do I codify and how much are these just like, I don't want them to be single use utilities, right? We're not making a new utility class system, right? We're making basics. So like we could have a v padding equals, can we not use, can't use dashes, all right. And have be XL maybe, and then something like that. Sure. Then we get some padding in there. And then we think about, do we want to allow for this to have a full width container? Or do we want to allow for a person to come in and say they want something more like div class equals bg blue 300. And then inside of this, they could have a container. In fact, this should be the section, right? Section. And this should be as a div. And then the v padding be XL. And in our container, let's set up our interface. Import type HTML attributes from Astro types. And then we want to interface props, extends that. Does not exist on the type. We do need that. But it should exist on the type. Did we get around that on our heading, or do we have that error on our heading? We got around it. How do we get around it? Extends, because it extends a specific attribute, so, or a specific element. So we'll go with div. Cool. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, the nice thing is also, like, we can override these paddings. Again, we've got that escape hatch where we can put in a class to override it. So we have a section. This is where we're at. Let's see if our typing is working here. V padding. Cool. All right, so what else would we want to have on something like a container? I think that's probably all I would put in here for the moment. Do we have children? Are children defined on our container? Obviously, they're working. Slot. That's fine. So then we could also do a button, and we could do a few different headers, right? And we'd get a banner out of it. So this would be, it's going to need an href. All right. So we have const href and attributes. We'll need to have sizing on it as well, but we can start with this. Text is white. We got a background color. All of those things. Import type HTML attributes. And then we also need the as, right? As equals a interesting. I didn't know I could do that. That's nice. I mean, really, I want it to be an A, or actually, I just want it to be an A. Do I even want to give the opportunity for this to be anything other than an anchor? I don't know. We do need, I guess we have A, right? And the attributes can have a title, so we can keep the title. So theoretically, I can come in and I can add a button to one of these. Which, of course, on this one, I'm not going to get a dynamic import for it. There it is. So I could each of these then has an issue, right? As we're building these sorts of things out, we then lose out on the ability to do margins and stuff like that, and control all of that. And where those controls live is its own question. Well, let's finish the button work, right? Because we might want to have sizes and that sort of thing. So button size. Small, medium, large is fine. Variant is also a good idea. And then down here, we'll start with size, medium, variant, primary. Oh, sorry, they're not colons, they're equals. And then let's get rid of our backgrounds. And we'll add them as booleans. So then we can go in, we can say, what is the, why would we choose that as our secondary? I don't know. Let's see. So we could have another button. That is secondary and size is large, which changes nothing. Size, small, text small, medium text base, okay. Large is large. I mean, the interesting thing about doing it that way and just having it based on the oh, because I didn't actually update my typing. So that actually works. Cool. Well, this has been more tiring than I thought it was going to be. Again, that beginning part was rough. Let's get init. Oh, I already have a git add, git commit, first few components, GitHub. All right, new GitHub repository, Astro agency components. Push u origin main. Cool. Well, here's the link I'll post in chat if anyone is interested in playing around with it. Obviously, there's no README or anything yet. That still has a ways to go. But cool. Thanks for hanging out with me today, y'all. I don't really have much else. I'm going to go find some lunch, work on some other stuff maybe. So we'll do this again sometime soon. Thanks, y'all.